So on this side.
No.
Thanks for putting us on candid camera.
You're welcome.
So then a lien cannot replace it from a lawsuit or whatever it is, whatever reason.
In the state of Florida, under the homestead statute, the homestead cannot be attacked for outside debts, regardless of which spouse it is. However, when it comes to buying or selling the homestead, it's a very simple rule of thumb. It takes one spouse to buy it, it takes both of them to sell it. So it doesn't matter if they both own it or one of them owns it. When they sell it, because of the fact that the spouse without ownership has rights, those rights have to be eliminated by them signing off. So if I'm taking a listing, and let's assume the husband is the owner, and I don't get the wife on the listing agreement, what happens when she refuses to sign when an offer comes in?
No deal.
Right. No deal.
So the house is completely protected.
No, no, no. It's protected from outside debts.
Yeah, that's what I mean, from outside.
That's not what you said. Not completely protected. If you don't pay your mortgage payment, if you don't pay your property taxes, you don't pay the...
In that case, I know.
But also understand too, as you go to sell that property, if you owe people money, they can attack your net proceeds. Because it's not your homestead anymore.
That, so, under the homestead, exemption, whatever, you cannot sell it.
Of course you can sell it.
But you lost all the rights to it.
Yeah, because it's not your homestead anymore.
So it becomes, whatever it is, investment or whatever it is. You sell it, then you.
It becomes something that you did own. But we're not looking at taking the property from you. You can't take the creditor at that point couldn't take the property away from anybody. They'd have to come after the net proceeds of the sale, which is your money. But they can't put a lien on that property because it's not your homestead anymore and it belongs to somebody else. And that person doesn't own it.
Yeah, yeah. So, all this plan continue to the kids?
What are you changing gears on?
This falls out. So, but they have kids. They said about blood, so it is their blood, it is this false blood.
Who owns it? Who owns it?
No, I'm asking, I'm sorry, but I'm asking.
Who owns it? I can't answer your question unless you tell me who
Oh,
owns it.
they spouse, the husband had died, they spouse. And they
Okay,
spouse has
all right, so you
died.
got a situation where the owner of the property is dead.
Yeah,
It is a homestead. Therefore, the spouse, remaining spouse, surviving spouse, owns it in the life estate. And any children there own it as remainder and fee simple.
remaining of 50. Okay.
Now, if there's no kids, it automatically goes to the other house,
The automatically goes where?
to the remaining surviving spouse,
Survive.
because there's nobody else there.
Right.
Okay.
Well, like I said, it's a very simple rule of thumb. You don't have to get stressed over it. It takes one spouse to buy it, it takes two of them to sell it. It makes it real simple. And as long as you live in that homestead, outside debts cannot attack it. Well, I can attack you. Well, they can't tax you, I shouldn't say that. They can get judgments against you,
And when you sell it.
but they can't take the property. Well, that property, they can take other properties. But when they sell it, yes, when they sell it, then it opens itself up to attack by the creditors. Also, there are statutes within the state that says at a certain point that debt is no longer exists, if they haven't collected it.
Well, hold on. 7 years?
Somewhere between 7 and 10.
Come on, what?
Somewhere between 7 and 10.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to the bottom of page 193, if you will, please. What is a deed?
Written instrument that conveys the real property.
All right, so it's a written instrument used to convey title. And what's title? Bundle of rights, which we studied about in the last chapter. So I guess I can't give you the title to my property. Why can't I give you the title to my property?
Because it's a bundle of rights.
Because it's intangible, it's rights. The piece of paper tells me which rights I have. Is it fee simple, is it life estate, what is it? Is it a trust? When I look at the deed, there are two parties in the deed, the grantor and the grantee. Who is the current owner of your property?
Grantee. No, the grantee.
Just repeat the grantee.
Grantor is the owner of the property, because he's granting you the rights to be a grantee.
Yeah, the grantee.
Now, this is the third time we've done this. I'm not really happy with the results. And when you show up at training after you get your license, you screw it up again.
Such confidence.
It's not confidence, it's fact. It has nothing to do with confidence. It has to do with reality.
Yeah. Would you say the question again, please?
Yes. When you look at the deed, two parties to the deed are the grantor and the grantee. So if I looked at your deed, you're the current owner, correct?
Yeah.
So if I looked at your deed, would I see your name as the grantor, or would I see your name as the grantee? How many of you say grantee? How many of you say grantor? Now,
It's grantor.
we're not starting this tonight. I'm gonna ask one more time, and then I'm going to the next page.
Where is that?
Because right now, there's no excuse for what's going on.
Yeah, you do. A different answer.
Grantee.
Grantee because you did not pay off.
I didn't ask you anything. Everybody raise your hand if you say the grantee is the current owner. How many of you say the grantor is the current owner?
You're real for that one, man.
That's my little daughter, her granddaughter. And you hear that attitude in her voice? Emma. Bird and mother. Or 2 D's and a pot.
Oh, what is the answer? It's grantee.
Uh,
What was the
I
price?
talked to you the other night about the ORs and the EEs.
Yeah.
And that OR means that you're giving paper, and EE means you're receiving that paper.
Yes.
So at the closing of your house, did you receive a piece of paper?
Yeah.
Yeah, that piece of paper was called a deed. And they didn't get the original yet, because they have to record it before they can give you the original.
Okay, so you're at the closing, I thought you were selling your house. Okay, so, yes, guaranteed. If you're receiving the house, you're good.
Oh my
I
God.
didn't hear the question.
You just said the grant.
I thought I was selling the house.
See, I got two people back to back that use the word T way too much. I don't want to know what you think. But you better get this straight.
I grant you.
The ORs and EEs. The person you bought the property from, or the person that gave you the property, is always the grantor. You are the person receiving those rights on that document. That makes you the grantee. And that's rather interesting. How many of you own property here?
We just signed papers.
And you paid $3, $4, $5, $1 million for that piece of paper, and you don't have a damn clue what it says.
No, they want us.
Do you want?
So you're saying, well, the internet is gonna kill our business. No, it won't. We still gonna have to translate for everybody.
But you're right, almost nobody knows. There's a right answer.
I think they do. They Google it. Of course, we know everything that's Googled is totally accurate too.
Not always is accurate.
Sign in sheet.
I think we can move it as a new finding, but you wanna hear? In real estate, a grantee is a person who receives property after a sale or the transfer of title. Transfer of title?
What did you say in title? What in title?
In real estate, a grantee is a person who receives property after a sale or the transfer of title. So the grantor must have the title, and then he passes it to somebody else, which is a grantee.
Right.
So, when you ask if I own a property, I said I did not answer yes because it's not paid off yet, so I didn't see the title yet, so I don't own it.
You know
The
what?
bank owns it.
You know what? So far, you've dug a hole, and it's getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
I'm in the right place then.
Yeah. I need therapy. Imagine doing this for 40 years. 40 years I've been doing this. I'm still saying
Giving of free therapy.
You remember, there's two things I told you that you had to master in this class. That's critical for your real life world. And that's the language and the law. The two L's.
The language and the law.
If you can't speak the language, you're gonna look like a schmuck. It took me a long time to learn that word. Where I come from, that word isn't used. However, where my wife comes from, we don't need to get into explaining what it means. You can tell by the sound of it, it's not nice. In other languages, it probably has totally different meanings. Let's move on. I find that the ORs and EEs are always something that everybody has an issue with, whether it's grantor, grantee, or any of them. Wait till we get to financing, we get to mortgage or mortgagee, that should be interesting.
That's the stuff I know. This is a hard
We'll
one.
see. I'm gonna stick my neck out too far right now. Now, going back to the ORs and EEs again. The ORs are people who are giving documents. The EE is receiving the document. Don't base your decision on who transfers the money. Because each one of those ORs and EEs are not based on the flow of money, based on the flow of documents. And with grantor and grantee, I have to remember that this is about transferring title. It doesn't have to involve the sale of a property. I'm adding my spouse onto the deed after I get married. You can use a quitclaim deed. I'm gonna be the grantor, and my new wife and me will be the grantee. So in that case, I was both grantor and grantee. It's like when we look at the the enhanced life estate. Phyllis gave Phyllis a life estate, and then named the two daughters as remainder. And I think where you have to be careful with that thought process is, if you always associate a deed with the sale of a piece of property and nothing else, you'll miss questions where it's about to transfer of title, but there's no sale involved. And you have tons of that. Because I'd almost be willing to bet you that somebody that's got a life estate with vested remainder, and it wasn't set up that way at closing. It was set up that way after closing. Like after the deed is recorded, the deed from closing was recorded. Like the example I gave with people I was involved with. All right. Let's go to page 194, 195. Now, 194 gives you an explanation, and 195 gives you an illustration. You'll notice the numbers. Each one of the paragraphs that shows on the right-hand side is numbered. For example, the very first one, the names of the grantor and the grantee, and it tells you in parentheses, see number 1 on figure 9-4. 9-4 is the next page. And you'll notice that besides the name, you also have the address of both and the date it was executed. And you can see that looking. Also, you'll see it says that it's very typical in a lot of documents in real estate that a word, if it's used in the plural, it would be the same as if it was used in the singular. And we even say that in the contracts. So that it's not a trick. Consideration. The consideration is typically $10. Even when it's a sale. The way you can tell what the, how much they paid for the property, if you go to the upper right-hand corner, if you you still have that sample I gave you. You look in the upper right-hand corner of it. It has all the recording information. And then you'll see it says dock stamp is 70 cents. Well, that tax, which is on the price, is 70 cents per hundred or fraction thereof, which we'll talk more about in a few chapters. So if I see 70 cents, what's that tell me? If that tax is based on the property price, what's that tell you about that deed? It was not a sale. Because if it was a sale, even if it was $100,000 or $50,000, it'll be a whole lot more than 50 cents, 70 cents.
So the dock stamp means then the value of the exchange, the property,
If it's a sale.
if it's a sale, yeah.
But the tax is always paid. If there's no price, because it was simply an exchange of property, or adding on somebody, like I said, adding on a spouse when you get married. A new deed is going to be recorded. That deed will probably be a quick one. But again, I have to realize that the deed isn't just used when a property is being sold or when a property is being purchased. There's a whole lot more deeds recorded probably on people changing things within the way they own property. Especially here, especially with people that are retired. As they start looking at setting up their estate, there's a lot of deeds created to manage that. That has nothing to do with the property being bought and sold. I can't say anything. On page 194, line 11 and 12, it talks about the granting clause, which they also refer to as the premises clause. The word premises means what?
The area,
Is it usually last or first? The term premises, would that be thought of as something that happens first or happens last?
First.
yeah, before.
Premises,
Mm-hmm.
premises seems to me like something you would own. No, like where you stand, like,
I
get off
hate
my
'em.
premises.
Freeze.
First.
Yeah, pre is before. So a premises clause couldn't be at the end of the deed. If the word pre means in front, or at the beginning, or before, the words of conveyance there, where they talk about the granting clause, if you look on page 194, or not 95, I'm sorry. You see, you have 2 and 3 in that one paragraph. Where it says that said grantor upon consideration of sum of X amount of dollars and other good and valuable considerations to said grantee in hand paid by said grantee, the receipt hereof is hereby acknowledged as granted, bargained, and sold to the said grantee and grantee's heirs, and assigns forever the following land. What's coming next? After what I just read, what's coming next? The legal description.
They have to be filed.
It says describe land, situate line. Well, describing land is called a legal description. Guess what chapter legal description is?
Yes.
Next. The next one on 194 is called interest or estate being conveyed. Does your deed tell you what rights you receive? If you will look in about the middle of page 195, it's number 5, or it's actually 6, it says to have and to hold the same in fee simple forever. Now, how do I know which fee simple it is?
By the legal description,
No, let's do it the easy way. If there's one person on that deed as the grantee, it's an estate in several. If there's 2 or more and it says with the right of survivorship, it's what? It is joint tenancy.
Joint tenancy.
If there's 2 or more and they don't mention anything about right of survivorship, it's tenancy in common. If it says John Smith and Mary Smith, comma, husband and wife, it's tenancy by the entirety. But that can only be true if the deed is conveyed in fee simple. But it can be any one of those 4. Actually, there's a whole bunch of others. Fortunately, we're not in law school. Going back to page 194. On line 19, it says exceptions and reservations. Then it mentions deed restrictions in the next paragraph. I'll show you those. Appurtenances. That's number 5. That's right above to have and to hold. What the heck is an appurtenance? It's something that's attached to the property. Because everything physically or legally attached to that property goes with that property when it's transferred. That's why they do all those title searches, lien searches, so they know what's hanging out there on that property and whether or not that's going to make it transferable. Then it talks about legal descriptions. Like I said, in the next chapter we'll go into that detail. On lines 36 and 37, I see a highlight, I see a star. 36 and 37. If I have a deed fully executed, showing me as the grantor and showing you as the grantee, that's title passed. It's fully executed. I'm the grantor, he's the grantee. What you need?
May I have one too, please? Two.
All yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I've got the deed in my hand fully executed. Has title passed?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does he have title?
No.
I have title right there. When does he have title?
When you're in
When you close.
Well, we're not closing. This is my father, and I'm giving him a piece
When
of
you
property.
transfer and sign.
So you gotta get out of this habit of association. Every time you talk about a deed, you talk about a sale. It's not the only time that's used. Now, if I have the deed in my hand as the grantor, title hasn't passed. Has title passed now?
Yes.
No.
Put your hand, don't touch it. Has title passed?
No, not yet. When he receives it.
What if he refuses to accept it?
Then it's not, he doesn't get it.
It says voluntary, right?
Yep.
Which means if either party refuses to do it, obviously title has not passed.
In the event where you're not present at the closing, does your realtor,
No, it's the closing agent, or if you had an attorney to represent you, that would basically stand in your place. And it doesn't happen that way, and we're closed anyhow. The grantor and the witnesses will sign the deed. But then then the closing agent takes it back. And then there's the buyer's stack of papers and the seller's stack of papers. And when they're through, all those documents that we've talked about here will be in the proper package. Anything that has to be recorded will be a copy initially in your possession. Because the deed takes about 30 days to record. Approximately 30 days for all the recording to occur. And then at the bottom of the page, it says the signature of the grantor and 2 witnesses. Highlight that paragraph. It's not a star, it's a highlight. The voluntary paragraph, which is right above, it's 2 lines, is a star. Then below that, God bless you, starting at 38 to the end of the paragraph is a highlight, but not a star.
So where did they start anything?
The star is lines 36
He goes
and
6 and
37.
36 and
Oh,
37.
thank you.
And then the rest of the page is the highlight. On page 196, you will see that you have the requirements of a valid deed. Let's highlight the bullet.
Oh, bad.
14.
Yeah, lines 1 through 14. That would be the bullet. You'll see the first requirement that it has to be in writing, and it mentions something called statute of frauds. In the next chapter, we'll talk in detail about what this statute of frauds is, and it's an extremely important concept. It says the names of the grantor and grantee, well, that kind of makes sense. Then it says,
What page are you on?
I'm on 196, top of the page. Am I good?
Oh, I see the bullets, okay.
Yeah. And then it says grantor must be legal capacity. The heck does that mean?
Being.
Saying sound
All
mind.
right, sound mind and
Yeah, but he's healthy mentally.
sober. You're writing up a contract, and you send the buyers to lunch, and they come back and they've had a liquid lunch. Don't bother having them sign the contract. Because there's enough studies to prove the effect of alcohol on judgment. So, lock them in the conference room or whatever. Order in. Once they sign the contract, then you want to keep it drunk, so they don't change their mind.
Do me a favor, sir. You pass through.
Well, then we gotta sober them up before closing. And, or in the addendums they add to the contract, so maybe I just leave them alone. The next one says, consideration must be
Right.
described. Granting clause. The addendum clause, that's the one that says to having to hold the same in fee simple forever. It's telling you the type of estate being considered. And then you have the legal description. Why?
You know what you're buying?
So you know what you're buying, so you can identify the property. And then we get to signed by the grantor and,
Two witnesses.
what about the grantee?
And then they have to voluntarily deliver.
I have a question.
My question is, does the grantee have to be competent?
Yeah. No, well, no, he wants, he.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
Competent.
Confidence?
So yeah,
Grantee, it's a confidence.
Yes, no grant.
he has to do it because he wants to.
Well, you would make it deliver to somebody.
No? Yes or no? I think yes.
No. Next.
On line 6, what does it say? Who must be legally competent? Do you see grantee there anywhere?
No.
So he can be drunk.
No. He could be 6 years old and be my grandson, and I give him a piece of property. That's what he could be.
Oh, okay.
But see, I told you, the only time you think of a deed is in the sale of a property. That's why none of these thoughts come to your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the last part says voluntary, deliver, and acceptance.
Yeah?
So
Well,
6
we
years
get-
old can.
I'm not talking about that right now. I'll get there. I have a question for you. Now, obviously, if it was a sale, both parties would have to be competent, not because of the deed, but because of the contract. Or we'll never get to the deed because those parties are not competent. But again, that's not the only time a deed is used. Like the example I gave you of the husband and wife and her father. When we changed the ownership after closing. All right, let's try something. question says, title passes when the deed is, the choices are signed, delivered, recorded, notarized, none of the above.
Delivered.
All right, we're gonna vote. Everybody that says that the answer is A, please raise your hand. Everybody that says the answer to the question is B, raise your hand. Everybody that says the answer to the question is C, please raise your hand. Everybody that says that the answer is D, raise your hand. How many of you say that E is the answer to the question? Let me ask a question. Does it have to be notarized?
No.
To be recorded?
Yes.
By recorded, yes.
The signature has to be notarized.
No.
No.
Does the deed have to be notarized?
No.
No.
When would it have to be notarized? If you want to record it. Now, I think we all agreed that the fact that it's signed doesn't mean the title is passed. I just did that 2 seconds ago.
Yeah.
Now, I have a problem with this. Where's the acceptance? Or where's the delivery? Yeah, the acceptance. You told me it was delivery and acceptance. Where's the acceptance?
Well, I guess if you are is delivered, it's already been received.
So it's really none of the above.
You did always say it, but.
I mean, I'm just saying, based upon what we just talked about, that the answer is E, not above.
Yes.
Well, the answer is still B. And she said it right. You just didn't hear it.
If it's supposed to-
Delivered is past tense. And in the English language, past tense means it's already happened. Example. A box is in the up truck going to your house. When they get to the house, and there's nobody there, and there's nothing says they have to sign, then they leave it at the door. When they get back to the terminal, warehouse, the dock master asked, was the package delivered? And the answer to that question is yes. Now, if that was delivery, then it would be none above. Because delivery does not indicate acceptance.
So, because the two letters of the NDD means it happened.
Second?
Delivered, the two letters of the NDD means it happened.
Yes,
Not accepted.
right.
If it was Y, then it did not happen yet.
What do you mean about you didn't speak the language?
I have a question. If a signature is not required, when the deed is transacting, but it is, if it's notarized, it's not required, but it is notarized when it's recorded.
Here's the reasoning. You always want to notarize the deed, whether you want to record it or not. For this reason, if any of the witnesses dies, the deed can never be recorded, can never be notarized, which means it can never be recorded. But if you ask me, does the deed have to be recorded to be valid? No. You record the deed to protect your interest in the deed, not to make the document valid. Because if the document's not valid when you record it, guess what? It's still not valid. So in this case, the people that have to sign are any grantors and witnesses. The grantee does not sign, and the grantee does not have to be competent. Like I said, in a sales situation, the reason why that statement's not true is because both parties had to be competent to go to contract to start with. That's what I'm saying, you can't base every possible scenario on a statement. Questions on that? Okay. On page 196, line 15, it says types of statutory deeds. I'd like for you to do this. Starting with line 15, on page 197, where it says types of statutory deeds.
186?
96, I'm sorry. Put a bracket to the bottom of the page, which is line 33. And then on 197, lines 1 through 30. Now, take a few minutes, starting there with the types of statutory deeds, and go over to the next page.
Anybody that hasn't signed yet?
Okay. First question. What makes those deeds different?
What makes what?
The deeds different.
The type of, warranty?
The type of warranties. You'll notice they never say anything about fee simple or life estate or anything there. What makes deeds different is not the type of title you receive. It is the covenants and warranties. It said it in the first paragraph. You didn't have to get past the first paragraph. So when they ask me questions about the four of these, it's going to be about the covenants and warranties that they have there. The reason they call it a statutory deed is, if you went into the statutes where they talked about title and they talked about the deeds, when I first started, back in the late 70s, the deed was 15 pages long. Now it's 2 at the most. And I've seen old deeds that were 30, 40, 50, 60 pages long. There are phrases like the have and to hold. If you went into the statute and read what have and to hold meant, it's a whole paragraph, might be a whole page. By simply using the term to have and to hold in fee simple forever, if you include any part of the statute, the whole statute applies. Meaning that we don't have to repeat the same thing over and over and over again. I've seen deeds going back to from down here back to the early 20s. And on the deed, it had the list of the current owner and then all the previous owners. Which means we're talking about pages and pages and pages. Realizing with technology and everything, it got to the point where it wasn't necessary to repeat all this stuff. All we needed to use was key words or key phrases to indicate that that's there. So I'm going to describe one of those 4 deeds, and you tell me which one it is. It's mine, it's yours, good luck.
General one.
The bargain and sale deed.
Bargain and sale deed. All I did was promise you that I owned it. That's the warranty of season. I'm seized of it. That's the only promise in a bargain and sale deed, is that I am the legal owner of the property. And that's called the season clause, spelled with an S or a Z. Which was mentioned back, I think, in 194. How about this? I will be responsible for anything that I may have done to the title. But anything else is your problem.
Special warranty.
That would be a special warranty deed, and that would be a builder.
A builder?
Yeah, because they're not gonna be responsible for what may have happened on that land they bought. The fact that it doesn't have building on it doesn't mean it doesn't have issues. It could have ownership issues going way back. Look at it, if you buy it and you come up with a tenant, or the buyer, and they buy a new home, look at it. How about this one? It's yours. Good luck. Quick claim. Because all I'm doing is quitting my claim. quitclaim deed would be used in those illustrations I gave you, like the one here with the life estate, like the couple and her father. Those would all be quitclaim deeds. Because the only thing that needs to be accomplished there is that title is transferred from one person to the other. That's the only objective here. Which one's the best for the grantor?
The first one, the general deed
And
and the
the
general
general
warranty.
Yeah, warranty.
The best one for the
Sorry,
grantor is the
grantor.
quitclaim.
I know, oh yeah, for the
Yeah.
grantor is the quick
Because
claim.
as the grantor, what warranties do I want to give you?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Do I give two happy hoots about what happens to the place after you buy it?
Oh, yeah,
Okay. It's exactly what it sounds like. This is what an ex-spouse signs in front of the judge, giving up the house. It's a quitclaim deed. I won't ask if anybody's experienced that, because you won't know that your name was on it anyhow. Which deed has the most warranties?
The general warranty.
Let's take a look at the 5 bullets that are under general warranty deed. You got the covenant of season, which is the first one, that has a star.
Star, oh, you didn't know they had the star, the first.
Which one had the star?
Line
The first
27.
one.
Oh,
I
the
got
first
it.
seven. Oh, that makes sense.
And then it has the covenant of encumbrances.
Star too?
The only star is covenant of season. And again, I remind you that season is also spelled with a Z, so they're not playing games if you see that. Then you've got covenant of further assurance, covenant of quiet enjoyment, and covenant of warranty forever. Now, let me illustrate those for you. You bought a property from someone, or someone gave you a piece of property, and they gave it to you on a general warranty deed. 6 months into the ownership, you get a notice from the county that a tax lien exists that you were never made aware of. So you're all bent out of shape. Now, not a problem. Call up the grantor, and the grantor will say something like this: sit down and relax. Don't get yourself uptight. I'll take care of it. That's quiet enjoyment. Further assurance means I'm going to do something to further assurance that you're going to have quiet enjoyment. Meaning, whatever that problem is, I'll fix it. And how long do I promise to fix this for?
Forever.
Forever. Which means I can go after your estate. How's the grantee? Sounds really good. What happens if the grantor is insolvent when you need their help? You're up the creek without a paddle. That's why you buy title insurance. Because I don't need title insurance. Look at that general warranty deed. Look at all the stuff the grantor promises. And that stuff is only as good as the grantor. That's why you buy title insurance.
How common is this deed,
Which deed?
the use of the statutory deed?
The only ones they use. Typical sales transaction, you're gonna see a general warranty deed. Typical new home sale, you're gonna see a special warranty. When you are doing things like we talked about where you're changing ownership, you're putting it in a life estate, doing that kind of stuff, that's gonna be a quick claim. Anytime it's simply a matter of removing you from the title or adding you to the title, it's gonna be a quick claim. Because the function of a quitclaim deed is not to give the person warranties. It's to relinquish my rights to the property to them, whoever them is. When someone dies, the courts may appoint what they call a personal representative. As a personal representative, may I be involved in the sale of a piece of real estate owned by the estate?
Yes.
The answer is yes. What kind of deed would a special representative use? Or personal representative use? Well, special warranties, no, yeah, special warranty deed. Because all they're gonna warrant is what? What they may have done to it. Not gonna get, it's not a quick claim. If a minor receives property and needs to sell it, they're probably gonna have a guardian appointed to handle their affairs until they are of age. What kind of deed would a guardian use? A guardian's deed. You'll catch on to this in a minute. When someone is declared mentally incompetent, they normally have who appointed?
Power of attorney.
How's the name for? It's called a committee's deed. That committee can be more than one. You'll find what I'm talking about
Oh, yeah.
on page,
190.
actually 197 to 198. It's called special purpose deeds. All of these special purpose deeds are types of special warranty deeds. Now, in the last two chapters, we've been talking about all the rights and stuff you get when you receive title to a property. Then we get to page 198 at the bottom of the page, and they use the word limitations and the word restrictions, which sounds like what? An insurance policy. The front of it gives you everything, and the back of it takes most of it away. Does the government affect your ability to exercise your bundle of rights? Give me an example.
Yes. Eminent domain.
No, don't look at the book. I want an example of how the government restricts what I can do with my property.
Oil drilling rights.
I'm sorry?
Oil drilling rights.
Okay.
You can build some amenities in the high, for example.
Oh, you mean zoning?
So, yeah.
Taxes?
You can open a business design in a residential area. Yeah, it's zoning, no? That is
That's zoning. The broadest power that the government has to control the use of a private person's property is called police power. It's on the next page, 199. Police power. Has nothing to do with the police.
And the ownership limitation and restrictions, that chart is something that Oh, yeah, there is definitely.
Safety, the city's, has something to do
What?
with safety, technically it's the city's.
Right. The second one of the private restrictions is called eminent domain. I'd like you to highlight the word condemnation on line 13.
Give me the $1.80. How much it's gonna be for 1.2?
Hmm? Condemnation has to start. It is the ability to be able to exercise eminent domain. In other words, if you they come to you and say, listen, we're buying your property because we're building 95 through it, and you tell them, no, you're not, they can then go through the process of condemnation. I had a gentleman in class who worked on acquiring property in Florida when they were building 95. And he said, I have a whole bunch of stories, but this is probably my favorite one, he said. There was this lady, probably 80, 85 years old, born, raised, lived in the house that she was living in her entire life. So did her parents, and so did her grandparents. So what was the likelihood she was gonna move? Zero.
Slim to none.
And they knew they had their hands full because it was gonna become a political thing. Because this person had lived in the area her entire life, so everybody knew who she was. And they offered to build her a new house and give her X amount of dollars, simply because they knew the political issue that's going here. And they wound up going through condemnations, because she just rejected anything they had to say. She didn't really care. And this guy went out with the sheriff to evict her. So they get to her house, and it's the typical grandma house. It has the white picket fence. I mean, he elaborated on it, but I think you get the message. And they get out of the squad car, and they start up, and they go to open the gate, and she raises up like this. She's got a 12-gauge shotgun.
Were they coming?
Well, buckshot, which isn't gonna do anything and just sting like the devil, it's not gonna kill you.
Unless you're like 2 feet away.
And she says, I don't think you wanna do that. And that was her response. Now, this is a little old lady, 80, 85 years old, so I understand the tone and the attitude. It had to be, I felt sorry for her, but it had to be hilarious to see this. They finally found her granddaughter, who was the one person that she might listen to. They finally, after hours of dealing with her, got her to leave. But she had no interest. She didn't care, you know, if today was the day she was going, that was fine, but not taking my house while I'm still standing. So, and I'm sure there's stories like that, because I can just think of the people that, you know, where I grew up. They come in, they want to buy their property. It wouldn't be buckshot in
That happened in
either.
Atlantic City, but she never got out. They built the big hotel around her house.
Was
She
there,
didn't
is
have
there
to
another
leave.
one in New York City
In
somewhere?
Atlantic City.
There's another place in Manhattan.
Yeah,
I saw it. It's a big hotel, and then
Yeah.
you see like this alcove and this little old rickety house, and then part of the hotel. She never got out.
yeah, she knew the right people.
And they offered her a lot of money. She said, nope.
So if, someone buys a piece of land on the ocean for $5 million, and the city of Boca says, don't think we want you to build there, so we're taking your place by eminent domain. And
No, they wouldn't have to do that.
Only public.
Zoning would prevent that.
they had a zoning. They previously done the zoning, but. So then, the property isn't worth anything because it's unbuildable. They,
Well, it's not worthless because it can't be built on. Because just as the restriction was put on, the restriction could be taken off. And that's happening. As time goes on,
so that person has to take a loss because it's not worth the $5.
the law is designed for the public, not for the individual.
Okay?
And but that's good. But see, you also have to realize that if you deal with the intercoast or you deal with the shoreline, you're also dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers. So you know, and then you've got the city, and you've got the county, and you've got the state to deal with. So, you know, if somebody buys on the intercoastal or on one of the canals, and they want to put, it doesn't have a seawall, or they want to put the seawall, it's like a major project to get it done. Because of all the, you have to go through. I had one situation where they built a swimming pool 2 feet onto the setback. And the city and the county and the state were okay with it. Army Corps of Engineers, so you have to move the pole. So they went in, and they cut it, moved the wall. Yeah, when you get around the intercoastal, you get around the ocean, you got all kinds of restrictions on it. You notice on the ocean, you never see piers, other than the public piers. You never see individuals with piers out from their homes. I mean, they can afford it.
What? Go to Palm Beach Island?
To me, if I had that kind of money, I would have a pier that went out, and then I'd make a tea out of it. And then I could go out there in the morning and sit and have my tea and watch the sun come up, or zip around in my boat and tie it up. That'd be great.
There's people that have cigarette boats hanging right out front of their house in the ocean.
Yeah,
But you can do that in the lake, no? It's different
Yeah.
situation.
but again, how much you can do is another story. But again, there's a reason for that. If you let everybody start doing that, it would have a negative impact upon the value of the property.
Ecology.
And not to mention the impact it may have on the land. All right, continuing on, the next section talks about private restrictions. You'll see them listed there at the bottom of 199. Deed restrictions, easements, leases, and liens. At the bottom of page 199, let's put a bracket for lines 22 to 28.
We need just,
Are you 29?
just 29.
The broadest of all restrictions on private rights are deed restrictions. If you go to every one of these new homes, they were built as a new home community, they got all kinds of restrictions on them. You know, you live with it. You want to change your shrubbery? You can't just go out and dig up what's there. You gotta have permission. You want to paint the house, they've got colors. You gotta pick one of those colors. You want to put up a fence, there's certain fences you can put up, certain fences you can't. Those are all, they're restricted covenants. If it affects the whole community, which those type of things would, they're called restricted covenants. If it's against one particular property, it's a deed restriction. The example I gave, the houses around me could not be two-story. They put that as a restriction on each one of those properties. Helps to have friends. No people in higher places. Well, the salesperson was the next student. The other salesperson was the daughter of the builder. My wife's a good talker. Better negotiate. On page 200, lines 1 through 10. Easement. Is an easement a right to use your property?
Yes.
No, it's a right to use somebody else's property. If there's an easement on your property, it's not so you can use it, it's so somebody else can. Like FP&L, like the cable, like the water.
Like if a property has a lake and somebody else wants to go to the lake, and then they can use an easement.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
On line 5, they have easement appurtenance. Highlight that name. And then if you go to the top of 201, you have easement by prescription.
Easement by.
Highlight the name. The next paragraph, you have easement by necessity. And then on the line 17, you have encroachment. Now, I want to do something on this little illustration they have at the bottom of the page, because to me it was confusing, so I figured it out. You'll notice on one side it says Lot B, on the other side Lot A. And you see the lake, and then you see to the left of the lake the power lines.
Yeah.
You'll notice, if you look at the second, from the top of the page, the second pole, you'll notice that one side is darker than the other. That's the boundary between Lot A and Lot B. Here's what I want you to do to make it a little easier. Go right up to where the second pole, and following the dark and light shading, draw the line down to where it says public road at the bottom. So that when you're looking at this, you can see, it's easier to visualize what you're looking at.
They're probably good neighbors, so he's probably allowed to go fishing.
When you talk about this easement by appurtenant, unless it says otherwise, when title's given to somebody else, that new person has whatever that right is. The ones they play around with more are the ones on the next page. The first one's called easement by prescription. It says is acquired by continually using another person's real property for the statutory period when such use is adverse to the owner's interest. The easement is created after 20 years of open, continuous, uninterrupted use. It says, note the similarity to adverse possession. For example, you have a house that you bought 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Behind you is a park. The people in your neighborhood always use this one side of your yard to walk to the park. And nobody ever messed up anything or anything, Steve never said anything. And your lot was a little wider and the house was a little offset, so there was plenty of room there. If you allowed them to continue to do that for 20 or more consecutive years or uninterrupted years, it becomes an easement by prescription, which means they can no longer prevent the public from walking back and forth. Now, what if I let it go on for 6 years, what was 20 years? What if I let it go on for 19 years and 10 months, and then put up a sign saying you can't use the path today?
Yeah, that's fine, you can.
But how are they, how?
And then, what does that mean?
Not continuous.
Now the 20 years would start over again, which means then I could put the fence up I wanted to put up all along, because of my kids. That's when it came into play, because when I tried to put the fence up, the community said, whoa, you can't block our right to walk back and forth, we've been doing this for 20-some years.
But do they have an exact date, like on this day, you started walking through there? So it could be 5 years and they're just saying it's 20 and the guy gets screwed.
Or maybe not. Shouldn't have got screwed. Why? Because as their agent, I should have noticed that path. And remembering what I learned in a class with all kinds of useless information that never's going to come up, I might recognize that the buyer might want to check that out.
Okay. So it's our job.
See, one of these days, you might start thinking like an agent. And maybe not.
So the question I should ask is, what do you do?
If the maybe not occurs, we're gonna have a problem. And you know what? I don't buy the house.
Or you can buy it and put up a fence.
I'm sorry?
Or buy it and put up a fence if zoning permits it.
Yeah, they can hop the fence. They're gonna have to deal with my Rottweiler, but they're more than welcome.
Nope. You cannot do anything to impede their ability to use that pathway. So the fence, unless you put a gate in it, that was unlocked, or you put the fence back off the path, you do not protect your rights, you lose your rights.
So as a real estate agent, how would you handle that situation?
I would determine how long the house has been there. Then I'd try to find out how long, if, there's a reason why they're walking back and forth there. There's gotta be a shopping center or a playground or something. Then I need to figure out, and so you realize it goes owner by owner, going back to easement appurtenance.
And that's what I'm.
So there could have been 3 different owners during those 20-some years.
Okay.
Oh, so it doesn't matter if it's being sold and.
That's because these are easement by appurtenance. In other words, they continue on
Doesn't matter.
regardless of who owns it.
So it starts when the house is built, originally.
Well, it depends on what it is.
Oh, yeah, or built.
All right, the next one's called easement by necessity. I buy a property from you. What you actually did is you took a property and you cut it in half and sold me the back half. The only problem of it is there are properties all around the back half. So I have no access.
So now you have to build a spot through their property to get out.
So now what I'm gonna try to do is get them to give me an easement. I remember as a kid, used to call them right-of-ways. So that you could get to the other property. But you have to prove there's a necessity for you to get there. If the land is basically useless and can't be used for anything, then there's no necessity. If I plan on building my home back there, and there's nothing in the statutes or in the laws that says I can, then I'm more likely to get the easement by prescription.
Is that a problem?
Which means I have to be smart enough when I'm purchasing the property to make sure that I have documented rights of access to that property.
For example, if we have a buyer, a house, and we notice that that house in the corner, the bus stop from the school stops in that particular house to drop kids.
Right.
That's, is under, this runs under,
Easement by necessity?
No, no. That would go back. They're not actually coming on your property.
But the garage is
But
there and
they-
they stand in here, and the
Yeah.
property in here.
No. Come to stand on the sidewalk because you don't own the sidewalk.
No, they don't have sidewalks.
Then there's a certain amount of feet of the road that's under the control of either the community, the association, or the government.
The house have the garden, they finish the garden, and this, the street is here. So the bus coming from the school and drop the kids and stand in your, or in the garage or stand in your grass. Is no sidewalk or anything.
So you had to deal with the city.
It's a school board.
Yeah, you'd have to deal with the school board,
Good luck.
get them to find another spot to,
They don't even have money for the bus driver.
Yeah.
Put a cone,
Good luck.
a cone so the bus can't get too close and they start.
Man, I remember I used to have to walk in school. I was
the last one I had you highlight was an encroachment. That means I am
Unauthorized.
unauthorized use of whose property? Somebody else's. However, encroaching can turn into an easement, like what we just got through talking about.
Continuous use. 7 years?
One of them's 7, one of them's 20. The easement by prescription is 20. The encroachment is 7. Now, let's talk encroachments for a second. When you're taking a listing, you want to be conscious of the fence. You want to be conscious of anything that's near what appears to be the property line. Or you have a situation like this occur. There were 2 homes, people had known each other even before they moved in, and they've been there for quite some time. And one of them decides that they're gonna put up a fruit tree. So they put up the fruit tree, but when they put it up, it was 2 feet on the other owner's side. Now, the other owner didn't say anything, a nice tree, didn't care. And each year they'd share the fruit, and so on and so forth. And 10 years later, they, one of them sells the property, the one who doesn't own the tree. Now, The new owner puts up a fence,
Oh, ouch. What side of the tree?
which now puts the tree on the wrong side. Because the property that the tree was on was the owner that moved. The owner of the tree was now trapped, and was now blocked from getting to the tree. Now, if it's been there at least 7 years, the new owner is gonna have to give them access to the tree.
The new owner has to
Put
let
a
the
gate
other.
in there or something to allow them to get to it.
So the new owner does not have the right to cut it down?
Nope, not your tree. And the fact that I've been there 7 or more years with that tree consecutively, further. Now, speaking of cutting trees down,
Yeah. And what happens if the new owner don't want this tree and wanna cut it down?
He can.
well, you know what the word sue means, right?
Law and.
If you're gonna sue over a tree, the lawyer fees are gonna cost more than the new one.
You haven't been living long enough to understand that.
I paid a lot of lawyer fees, man, let me tell you. And I didn't do anything
So,
illegal either.
that means that, the surveys might be a very important piece of paper.
Oh, yeah.
But that's more useful stuff you're gonna learn about in this course that have no bearing on anything that happened in real life. I mean, all these type of things, you realize the possible problems you can head off by recognizing that maybe one of these, I don't remember which one it is, but I know there's an issue here. I got a tree on the wrong side.
I'm pretty sure they can resolve a tree issue. Like, I don't,
No, they.
are there people that are really like, I mean, if it was a mango tree, I would understand.
An
But if it's like a
avocado
pine
tree.
tree or something,
No,
like-
but an avocado tree.
Yeah, avocado.
You know what, you can cut the damn
Yeah, avocado trees are
tree.
expensive.
It's damn.
Oh my
God. So good and.
I know.
They really are.
Yes, ma'am.
So what you're saying is if you have a tree that was there before you purchased the home, you can't cut it?
Is it on your side?
Yes, on my side.
But if it's.
You can cut it off to where the property line would be,
Oh, okay.
as long as you don't kill the tree.
And it's-
If you kill the tree, you will be responsible for replacing it.
But it's too close to the house though. What about if it's too close to the home where it can lift the house up?
Oh, you mean the roots?
Yeah. You can't cut it, right? We'll have to get a permit on that?
Well, probably have to give the neighbor permission.
My neighbor says cut the damn tree.
I'm saying what?
My neighbor said cut the damn tree. Because the roots is so big, it's spreading from my side to his side.
Understood.
Yeah.
Ficus?
Yeah.
Well, I'd probably get something in writing and get somebody in there, take the dead tree out. Get it in writing from the other person.
Oh.
Because then, you know what,
They can turn around and.
yeah, you know, by putting it in writing, get both of you decided, you stay friends.
And it has to be notarized, yes. So with the document be
Even
done.
that tree.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad
I
idea.
told you, there was a.
Even if you got something in writing,
The blossoms.
that
were on the
indicates.
other side.
That's what
It
happened
was
with the
a
hurricane.
nuisance, and they sued each other over the tree.
How long is he having it?
Because they don't want that the blossom were part of cleaning up their garden. And so they cut off the part that was hanging over on their side, and then one that on the tree says.
What about the FPNL box?
Oh,
Sorry.
oh,
The
wait,
FPNL power box?
wait, which one now? They got two on something.
Found it. I'm not talking about the ones on the wall, I'm talking about the ones on the property now.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, the ones you didn't like cook an egg on the side. Or the can they just sit out there.
You cannot fence around that hour. You can't do anything to block off their ability to have access to it. If you do, they don't have to ask your permission.
Wait, can you repeat that again? About the fence?
FPL power box.
Okay.
You put a fence around it and shrubbery because it's ugly.
Okay.
They come along, they don't even have to knock on your door and say, listen, we need you to, they can just get it out of their way and that's your problem.
Well, it's okay to have shrubbery, right, as long as they can get in and access it.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of them with like design shrubbery, but there's like 3 feet all the way around it.
Well, it depends what they need to do.
Yeah.
If they just need to be able to get in there and check it out because it's not working right. But if they need to go in, they need to replace it, and they're gonna have to put a bigger one in, then it's gone. The point of all this is, people, you own your property, but the rest of the world controls it.
So it's like, what's the point?
All right. The next category they talked about were leases. Who are the two parties in a lease? The lessor and the lessee. Who's the lessor? Why?
OR.
Why?
Because they're the ones not giving the property.
Because he's giving a lease to the tenant. And the lease, if I'm not mistaken, is a piece of paper, a document. That was much better than Grant Maybe there is some thing. Now, let's take a look for a moment at some of the different leases that they talk about. On page 209, line 36.
209?
Yeah.
209? 201?
201, I'm sorry. All right, we're on line 201. We're on line 36. It says the 5 major types, characteristics of 5 types of leases are described as follows. The first one, highlighted, it says gross lease. Second one says net lease. The third one says percentage lease. The next one is the variable lease. And then ground lease.
Got 2 phones.
Which one's the typical apartment lease? Typical commercial lease? None. Typical, shopping center? Either the percentage lease or the variable lease.
What's the variable lease?
I'll show you. Percentage lease is exactly what it sounds like. You have a base rent, and then you pay a percentage of your gross sales as additional rent.
As an addition, wow.
So
What's an
that,
example of that?
that's when the real estate get
Like
residual.
around here?
Shopping centers, town center. You look at the, not the lease of the big stores.
It's what the
The
mafia
other,
used to do.
yes,
They're gonna make legal.
they may have something that says, okay, your rent is $2,000 a month. Any gross sale over 200,000 is an additional 3%. So I know I'm gonna pay 2,000 every month. plus
Plus,
whatever exceeds the, 5%, 10%, or whatever exceeds it as a set gross sale.
That's why they do
Wow, for the
things,
franchise.
that's why businesses that have stores like that still like to do things cash. I mean,
So what about
just letting you
those,
know, that's seriously.
like aviation, where they have the smaller planes or whatever, those buildings, is that considered a ground lease?
Now, ground lease would be Kings Point, I'm sorry, Century Village.
Oh, wait.
In Century Village, the association does not own the common area,
Oh.
does not own the clubhouse. The developer that built it does, and they pay a monthly rent. So they rent it, it's a part of the monthly maintenance, but they don't own ground.
So
Or like the pool and all
Like a
that?
co-op, well, in a co-op, you own a share of stock,
But
so it's a little different.
why would they put themselves in that position?
Who's they?
Century Village. How is that more beneficial than them actually owning it themselves?
Because the developer did it.
Oh, I get it now.
So that was there before the first unit was sold.
Alright.
That's not a bad deal. There's only about 40,000 units in the four Century Village.
Yeah, they're making bank.
But the developer isn't making any more money once it's sold.
Yeah, he is, he gets a rent payment every
yeah, he
month.
getting rent for the clubhouse and for the.
Ah, okay, because it's
Every
part of
month.
the association.
That man's a residual man. That man is.
Of course he making money.
And this company has ties to that company.
Yeah, you know a lot outside of this.
Huh?
You know a lot of information outside of this. Just really.
Well, I should.
It's
I
gotta be
mean, I've been doing this 40 years, I should know a little bit. I mean, if I didn't know what you did, you should get your butt up and leave.
I'm gonna.
It'd be a bad place to be.
Sorry, can you give an example of variable lease?
Variable lease? Yes. Should have put my glasses on so I can see. All right, variable lease, it talks about an index. Here is how you calculate rent using an index. You take the old index, now, a variable lease is tied to an index. It could be the consumer price index, could be whatever. But just an example. You have to know two things. You have to know what the new index is. You have to know what the old index was. In other words, this year's coming last year. Now, is the rent gonna go up or not?
Yeah.
How do you know that? Because if the rent is tied to the index, and the index just went up, what do you think the rent's gonna do? Gonna go up. And let's say for argument's sake, the old rent is $2,000 a month. So I would take the new index, divide it by the old, and multiply it by the old rent. You could do that on a per square footage basis, or you can do it on a dollar basis.
Where's that used, please?
Probably certain commercial properties. Maybe some places where they would use the other rent, percentage rent. 'Cause one's based on the index, one's based on percentage. Now, the percentage lease, an illustration of it is at the bottom of the page. 202. It says calculated rent owed for a percentage lease. Put a bracket around that, which goes to the bottom of the page. Not quite. This one's really hard. This is the one we were talking about before. You're gonna have a base rent, regardless of whether you have any sales or not that month. But they will set a minimal level, let's say $100,000 gross sales, which means any amount over that 100,000, besides the rent, you're gonna pay a percentage of what exceeds that base number. So if it's $100,000, let's assume that everything over 100,000 an additional 3%. So I've got my base of 2,000, and now I have 200,000 of gross sales. So that's another 3% of the money over 100,000. That's why his comment about they like cash. What they don't know is in a place like Town Center and stuff, they have every cash register tied to a computer. And anytime there's any action in there, there better be ching-ching going in the box. Because that was one of the things in the past, everybody, give me cash.
Yeah.
So if the center doesn't base its rent on that and doesn't have you tied into a computer, you don't have a problem.
I mean, that kind of makes sense, because that's why the mall is able to always update itself.
Yes.
Yeah,
Go
that's
to
what
movie
I
theater
was
and stuff.
wondering. I was wondering that, because I thought, everybody would just say that they had sales X.
I know that one point Town Center had a system set up. Somebody was telling me about it, but he worked there and he wouldn't explain the whole routine as to how it worked.
Excuse me, are we allowed to use calculator?
Absolutely. But you want to get one that does 4 things. Multiply, divide, add, and subtract.
No.
If it does any more than that, you've got useless functions. Which means you'll find your daughter or son or granddaughter or grandson.
Can you bring your phone?
And
Oh,
no.
that's another source of, okay.
And still, I had a guy in class, the first night, I said, you will need a calculator at some point. And so he got a calculator, Mickey Mouse calculator with ears.
Oh, no.
And he used it all the way through FREC1, took it to the state exam, and passed, first time. Comes back a year later, because then you only had to be a sales associate for a year before you could go to the broker's course. He came back to the broker's course with his calculator. He says it's my good luck charm. Well, it must be because he passed the class test and the state exam, and now he has his broker's license. I don't know if he still uses the calculator or not. Thought that was interesting. Technically, the math problems on the state exam could be done by hand. I'll show you as we go through some of the math problems, how you can work math problems without a pencil or a calculator.
So are you gonna do just math?
I don't really think I have to do these math problems, you're kidding me.
No, but just do it to do it.
What? It's done, right there on the page. I just gave an example. Well, let's look at the